Hi, you guys. Welcome to the CBCI's live stream. We are super excited with our guests we have here today, but I'm going to give you guys about a minute to log on, get in the chat with your questions, and we will be right back.
One of the things that we were told at the very beginning of this was be yourself. And I tell people that all the time. God ain't gonna bless you acting like nobody else. You've got to be yourself in your space. And I'm oftentimes the youngest African American in the room. Sometimes I'm the only African American in the room. Sometimes I'm the only African American in the room that actually speaks up like he's an African American in the room. We've got to go back to the 1960s when we all decided that your struggle is my struggle.
So let's roll up our sleeves. Let's get to work and create a brighter future for all generations to come.
Together, we can change our community for the better.
Let's work together to create a community where we can all be proud, where every person has the opportunity to thrive.
I'm not gonna leave without that message being heard. I'm unapologetically me. I've been told that I was too articulate. I've been told that I sounded like a radio personality. Why can't a black man sound like that? Why can't a black man sound intelligent and articulate? Why can't a black man speak with passion? Why can't a black woman be heard and understood? Why can't she? Let's go. I'm sick and tired of the labels. I'm sick and tired of being told you too articulate. You sound too good. Excuse my language, Dad.
This whole purpose of this boot camp was to take what we learned and take it back to our people. And we can't do that with a cracked foundation. It don't matter if we young or old. We all know what we have to do.
That's such a great intro. Love that video every single time. So, hi, Tiffany. How's your day going? Yes. So, let's just jump right into it. So, tell everyone who you are and what you do.
So, hey, everyone. Crispin, thank you so much for having me, and thank the Congressional Black Caucus Institute for inviting me to chat a little bit. So I am Tiffany Israel. I'm actually owner of Bright Hire. It's a consulting firm that really focuses on strategy for small businesses, municipalities. I like to say scaling businesses. And then as an aside from that, executive coaching. It's really hard to move forth strategy if your executive leaders don't feel equipped to do that work. And when I say executive leaders, that really spans the gambit from growing businesses to newly elected officials. I like to say you may have big ideas, but how do you empower your staff to move that forward, which is really how I got engaged in politics altogether. And so I am a CBCI grad. I am the 2021 class. And really my work in operations scale with my firm and then local elected officials around my community is really what started me in what I did not think of then as political work, but really thought of it as community work. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, but I'm sure we'll dive in just a little bit more about how I even got to the program at all.
Yes, and that was actually my next question. So, what made you decide to join Bootcamp?
Kristen, if I'm honest, I didn't decide to join boot camp. Boot camp found me. So I had owned a firm in the Orlando area for a number of years. I've been a business owner probably going on 15 years now. And in the beginning of the video, the gentleman mentioned you were often the youngest person in the room, the only African American person in the room, and for me, sometimes the only young person in the room, and just compound those together. And that was me and my community. My office operated in a predominantly African American community downtown. And so I really got to know my elected officials, how I could help my clients. I was often the person in the back of the room saying, no, I heard from my community, they actually need, or yes, the park is getting redone, but I don't need just one set of jungle gyms fixed up for our babies. I need us to figure out how to get every single jungle gym fixed up for our babies so that they are operating and playing in a space that is safe. And so that's just kind of how my community knew me. And I remember one of my clients at the time, she said, hey, Congresswoman Demings is doing this event tonight. You should come. And I said, okay, I'll be there. I was certainly the youngest person in that room. At the time, Congresswoman Demings was introducing the community to who she would be voting for the, I want to say it was 116th Congress. And at that meeting, I met the president of our, the Orange County, Florida NAACP. And being one of the youngest people in the room, she said, hey, do you want to lead our young adults committee? I said, yes, absolutely, sure. And so I did. And that committee went on to host a number of programs in our community. And I went on to run for president of our Orange County NAACP, served as president. I am still the youngest person to serve as president of the Orange County NAACP branch. We are now 97 years old. And so that's really great, but it really just continued to grow my impact in my community. And so I got a call about CBCI because I had been nominated by Congresswoman Demings and her staff for my impact in the community. So I really didn't know much about it. When I walked in, I had, volunteered on some campaigns, but I like to say I wasn't necessarily engaged in campaigns. I was engaged in community. And you really grow to know campaigns and community and elected officials are really the larger political ecosystem. Now I have language for that I didn't quite understand then, but I knew I wanted to be in community. I knew I wanted to help my community and my greater community, and how I could, and how this experience was really going to be help me do that work and be more impactful. And so I was really excited to get the call, and it was kind of like, hey, can you be on this date? And it was like, yes, absolutely. And I immediately called, her office and the staff and thanked them so much. A few folks out of her office had gone through the program as well, so they were able to give me some insight and some background. And really coming into the program opened up a world of possibilities, not just for what I already did in business, but really how I wanted to continue to impact my community, Black and brown folks that looked like me, but my greater community as a whole.
I love that. And you spoke a lot about sometimes you were often the youngest in those rooms, the youngest in those positions. Just to paint the picture, I know you're never supposed to ask a woman her age, but do you mind sharing how old you are and how old you were when you took that position of president?
Yeah, so I am 35. I'll be 36 later this year. That would have been 2021. 2021. So 31-ish when I became president of the branch. And then I led the branch up until 2022 when I ran for office.
Yes, I love that. So you said you got the call and it was no hesitation. You were like, yes, I can be there. So when you got there, what was your first impression?
Ooh, home. Home. Everyone was so warm, open, friendly. I really walked into the space open to learn, both from my cohort, from the instructors, the trainers. I really walked in wanting to be a sponge and absorb all that I could from the moment. Again, I understood the ecosystem, but I did not necessarily think of myself as someone who is at that time in politics. It was a part of the general ecosystem. What you learn is that every piece of this work is somehow intricately involved in how we move not just politics, but community forward. And so, I really got to know everyone. I still am very close with a lot of my cohort. We have a group chat when we're going to be in DC or we're going to be in town. I have cohort members who are running for office right now, and we're reposting one another's posts or events or fundraising and things like that. And so the initial impression was home, very much a community of people focused on the same type of issues, certainly broad ranging, but wanting to see our community move forward. And then from the perspective of our trainers, exceptional trainers. I still talk to every single one. And when I ended up running so I did CBCI in 2021. When I ended up running for office in 2022, one of our trainers was actually one of my vendors. And I'll say 20 times over again, I don't know if I'll run for office again, but I would choose that vendor team 100 times over. And having Nadia was one of our trainers. Having Nadia there, someone who I trusted from the program, someone who I knew, someone who I had interacted with and just could pick up the phone and say, Nadia, this thing is happening. Like, what should I be doing? Was really undergirded the campaign altogether, and my confidence in the decisions that I was making, because I already trusted her from the program. She had led us through, and not just Nadia. If I go to a specific city, I go and see Ike or Richard or Adjua, whatever the case may be. They really made themselves accessible to us, and the way the program is structured, sometimes you need a little, what am I supposed to be doing here? But after the fact, you realize how much of a simulation to a campaign it really is. And that last night, when you're up until all hours of the night because you have to get stuff done, that certainly feels like the last few weeks of a campaign.
I love that. So it sounds like it was really a learning experience. Like you got there, everyone felt like family once you got there, and you continue those connections today. So what was a moment during boot camp that really shifted your mindset?
Ooh. I don't know that I would call this a mindset shift, more as I would call it like a really deep light bulb moment. It was one of the last nights there, and my team, we are getting everything together for the present. I don't want to give too much away for folks who are on their way there, but there's a presentation on the last night or the last morning, depending on your schedule, and you really see the infrastructure of the campaign, but the expertise of the people in the room really come together. If you have been in campaigns before, you understood kind of the general framework. Again, my background is in strategy and structure. And so I'm always looking at what is the big picture and what is kind of the octopus that, the tentacles that undergird what you actually need to do. And so you're seeing your campaign manager and your finance person and your speech writer, and someone who's getting the campaign plan together, and all these different pieces that really work to move a candidate forward
Mhm.
come together, right? But some of us worked in those spaces before and some of us had not. So you're also seeing the expertise and background of the folks in the room and how every piece of your general experience, whether you come from a background in legislation or politics or you don't, how so much of your background can be woven into being effective and efficient in a political legislative type space.
Oh, nice. So, how was the environment? You kind of already answered that, but just being around other driven individuals, kind of speak on some of the connections that you made that you still keep in contact with today.
Absolutely. One, we had people from all across the country. And so while I am in Florida, you are hearing and seeing the politics of folks that live in red states or blue states or purple states, and how that really drives their work forward. Um, but also at the time, our particular year, there was a vote happening in Texas, and the a few of the legislators actually leaving. And so we are also bonded together around this experience that we are looking at and talking about and realizing maybe how engaged we are in this work. And that's just really comforting to find like-minded people who watch some version of a news channel most, if not all of the day. Um, but also just talking through how to impact our communities who may not be watching the news all day long. But we can be the median between the folks who are very deeply ingrained in this work and the folks who are trying to buy their first home, trying to feed their families, trying to make sure that their child gets to the best schools, and what those options are for them, depending on their state, because that also looks very different. And so we get to talk through some of the challenges and successes that are happening throughout our state in very specific areas that really impact everyone and anyone, but just look different depending on where you live. And so the environment was very collaborative.
Mhm.
We were wanting to learn from one another. We were wanting to learn and see what is happening in our individual states, how we can perhaps bring those back, those good things back to our communities or good ideas back to our communities. And then also trying to brainstorm what are the organizations that can help to disseminate that information, because it's not just elected officials. A large majority of the work is done through organizations like the NAACP or our Credible Messengers or our Moms Demand Actions, our organizations that are really focused on education and childcare and what that looks like. And so also starting to pick apart, what does this look like in your community? What does this look like in our community? Is there maybe an organization that's similar that we could reach out to get this really great idea or push this work forward? So collaboration is how I would really describe the environment best.
Yes, I love that. And I know you learned a lot and there were plenty of takeaways, but what's one key thing that you learned at Bootcamp that you still use today?
Ooh, I'll tell you the first thing that comes to mind. You're only as strong as your network.
Mm.
Yeah. The really great thing about CBC and other programs like it, but specifically CBC, is that you are gaining a network of allies and friends. Certainly, folks have become my friend, that are around the country that
Mhm.
you get to be a resource for, and they get to be a resource to you. So to make sure that when you're in these rooms, that you're actually leaning in, that you are present, that you are taking advantage of the space that you are in, because it is so rare. Because we are in our everyday work days, we are handling clients, we are handling legislators, we are handling community, we are handling family. We are not often in rooms where we just get to brainstorm how to make things better, how to make our lives better. And so utilizing our network, my network, really being present in places and spaces where you get to just ideate with the best of the best, is something that I try to stay present about, no matter the room, but very specifically in that room. Because I think I came in not really knowing what to expect and walked away with more than I could have imagined. I remember on my own campaign, we were having a discussion, and I said, Nadia, I need to know my win number. And she's like, stop. You need to be the candidate. You know too much now. We kind of laughed about that.
On the background and all.
Like, you know too much now. And it's absorbing all the things you didn't know, but you can then utilize in other places and spaces, and remembering your network. If I'm ever in a city where one of my cohort members is, I'm going to hit them up. I'm going to reach out. I'm going to say, hey, do you want to meet? Tell me what's happening. If you're in the middle of something, do you want to knock doors? Do you need some help? Just remembering to really dig into your network. And when you have opportunities and places and spaces for you to be present and just think through the greatest of ideas, make sure to really take that time to do that, because you never know what's going to come out of it.
Yeah, you never know what's going to come out of it. Great opportunity. So, what, if anything, changed for you after boot camp? When you left and got back to Florida, what changed? Maybe like in business or like in your mindset? What's a specific change that you can think of?
Yeah, I wanted to do more.
Mm.
I wanted to be more engaged. I walked out of boot camp thinking I was going to be a campaign manager. That's what I was going to do. I when people ask, organizational and change management strategy is a really long way of saying I keep people organized. I keep people, organizations, for-profits, nonprofits, government organizations organized. And so campaign manager to me just made sense. I was going to keep this thing organized. That is not at all what happened. Not at all what happened.
Tell us what happened.
If that was 2020, the summer of 2021, I was thinking through, I was getting calls. It was from people in our, throughout Florida, and specific organizations around, Tiff, would you consider running for office? It was a redistricting, you'd come out of redistricting. And having done the boot camp, I felt so much more equipped. Like I understood what needed to be done in order to run for office, and the requirement, the time commitment, and you never really know till you get there. But I walked out feeling more prepared. And so if that was the summer of 2021, by end of January, February 2022, I was talking through running for office, what seat, what are the vendors I would need, who would be on the team. And to that end, in making those phone calls, I remember being in my office, walking outside, and Nadia calls and she said, did I hear you're running for office? And again, we kind of laughed about it because that's just not what I thought. And she said, I know you are so hard down wanting to be a campaign manager. And she's like, I just knew that was not going to be it. But I was also calling her because she does mail. And that's also really important. Realizing who in your state, who is adjacent to you, that you can bring into your team in order to give your campaign the best shot at success. And CBCI also does that because there are people in the room who can make those connections, whether in your state or out of state, or they know someone and can recommend someone. And that's whether you are the candidate or you are in the campaign ecosystem, or you are an elected looking for a legislative aid, or whatever the case may be. It really changes your purview on what is possible and who I can potentially call to get what I need. And so what changed is certainly my mindset of what was possible and what and where I could be effective in my community. And just thinking bigger, really thinking bigger, not and thinking bigger, not just for me, but also for my clients. What does it look like to think through executive coaching from a legislative perspective? I'm a newly elected official. Maybe I've led a team before, maybe I have not, right? You could have a long span career, but you've not really led a team. And so what do I need to do as a leader? How can I train them to understand what they need to do as a leader, but also how they need to design their team in order to help them be effective and maybe fill some of those educational gaps or skill gaps or just experience gaps in order to make their office what the community really needs them to be to push forth and move progress ahead.
Yes, I love that. So, for the people out there listening, in your opinion, who do you think boot camp is for? Like, describe that individual.
Oh, the first thought is everyone, but I think folks who are interested in seeing change in their community and not just seeing the change, but wanting to be a part of the change, wanting to get their hands muddy a little bit, a lot of it sometimes. And I really went into, or at least initially thinking something like CBCI was for people who were already in the political ecosystem, who were already working for a congressional member, who were already working with a local or state elected official. And there is a larger ecosystem at work. It is the people who are interested in advocacy, and not just interested in advocacy, but want to be the person on the front line, maybe want to work in an organization, want to help craft that legislation, help to organize the rally in whatever state capital you're in. It is for the people who want to change their communities, their states, the nation, but don't want to do that in a passive way. They want to be in the midst of it. I would say CBCI is certainly for you. And then on the business side, if you really work with elected officials or in their offices and really want to make sure that you're grounded in how you are going to affect change for Black and Brown folks, for your community at large, certainly thinking about the SCOTUS decision, how imperative it is that there are minorities at every phase of a campaign, at every phase of the legislative cycle, the legislative process, so that you can be a voice for your community. If you are not the elected, how do you make sure that you have the ear of the elected so that your community's voice and needs continue to be prioritized? And so it is someone who wants to be within the political ecosystem, the community ecosystem. I keep saying politics, but it's really community. This is a community work. Who wants to impact their community at any and every level and wants to get their hands really dirty in that work. Definitely for you.
Yeah, so it's not just for people that want to run for office.
No. I did not think I was running for office at all. That was happenstance. I wanted to do the work of my community, of being the person in the back of the room that says, no, we need more. And I'm willing to sit at the table late nights and early mornings to figure out how to make those happen, how to make it happen. I'm willing to sit down with my community members. I'm willing to sit down with the elected officials. I'm willing to sit down with the police departments. I'm willing to sit down with our state attorney's offices. I'm willing to sit down with our school board members. I'm willing to sit down just in community to figure out what our parents need, what our children need, what our elders need, what does housing look like? I mean, there's a plethora of issues that need to be addressed. And they may look a little different in your community than in my community, but they are no less important. And so find that thing, that issue that really smolders in you, that you have some fight about. If you have an issue that you have some fight about, this is absolutely the program for you.
I love that. So after boot camp, how did that impact your confidence, just like in business and running for your campaign? Was it a confidence booster for you?
100%. 100%. You don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so walking into boot camp, I can't say that I felt timid in any way,
Mm-hmm.
but I did not realize how much I didn't know. And I walked out feeling very confident in what I learned and what I could then take back to my community. And
Mm-hmm.
so, again, there's an entire ecosystem, but there was a specific session on advocacy and what that looked like. And so for folks who are really engaged in a specific issue in your community, you get to see that bigger picture. You get to see the pieces that move it forward. And so in walking back to my community, one, I went back to the NAACP as the NAACP president and said, okay, we need to get back. We need to get to work. We've been working, but how do we do more, right? Who do we need to call on? How can we get more entrenched into this work? How can we get more feedback from our community? What do we really need? How do we move this forward? And then also saying to our elected officials, we're hearing this. We want to be the median, or we want to bring our community along so you can hear directly from their mouth. But the long and short of it, we need change in this specific issue. And certainly just understanding the nuance and sometimes the time constraint, what you can get done, what has a longer time horizon, allows you to be patient, not too patient, but patient in what you're asking for, which just creates a better working relationship a lot of the times. If you can understand the constraints to move an initiative forward, you're not so down put when it doesn't get done in the time frame you thought it would. You understand the nuance a lot better and can say, okay, maybe this is something, this particular issue, we need a longer time horizon, but we're going to keep at it. It's the reason people introduce the same bill session after session after session, whether that's in their local house or federal, because we need to keep at this because the work still needs to be done. The issue still needs to be resolved, and it may not be heard now, but I do need it to get heard, and I need something to be done about this thing. And so it certainly builds and continues to grow confidence in that area. But it allows the ability to keep going. Sometimes this work can be a bit hard. You don't see progress as fast as you would like it to. And so boot camp gave some nuance to perhaps why progress doesn't happen in the time frame that we'd like it to, but we have to keep going and keep pushing and keep moving because we're going to eventually, it will bend towards justice.
Yes, so be patient, but not too patient, like you said. So how has it changed the way you approach your goals in your business now?
Oh, I understand the nuance of government better now. And so when I think about, a lot of my clients are municipalities, for example, which is very different when you're working in private organizations. An organization that wants to scale and wants to grow has more leeway than perhaps a governmental organization that has fiscal constraints, that has governmental constraints, that has legal constraints. And so understanding the difference as to not what is possible, but perhaps how fast you can pull levers for organizations that are public versus private versus municipal versus state. really give some context to how you walk into the room, how you present a proposal, how you need to structure a specific type of work, something that may take me, I don't know, 2 months, or between 2 and 6 months in private, may take a year, right? Depending on what that leader looks like. It tends to be more consensus building in government organizations. And so I take that nuance and specificity into how I function and how I work and how I approach what is possible, or at least time horizons sometimes for what's possible. But then with executive coaching, I feel like it's the exact same. Everyone's trying to get something done. It's how quick we can get something done, how effective we can get something done, and how precise. And so for elected leaders, it's listening and asking, what do you want? And then what skills does your team have right here and right now to move your ideas forward? And what do we need to teach and build for them in order to move those ideas forward? And I would say those look very similar in terms of whether it's an elected or a C-suite leader or a group of 20 leaders. It's just understanding what is the needs of that office and then how to best support those leaders to do what they need to do.
Yeah. Nice. So what was your absolute favorite part about boot camp?
Ooh. That's a good one. I don't know why staying up way past my personal bedtime would ever be my favorite part of boot camp. You know, we spend a lot of time together in session. And we are talking to one another and we are getting to know one another, but it is really in the times when we're on break, the times that we had to just sit with one another, the times very, very late in the evening into the wee hours of the morning that we are getting to know one another, understanding the nuance of state, just bonding. It's my favorite part is being able to sit with my cohort and say, how are you? What is happening in your life outside of politics? Like, how is your family? How are you doing? You know, what are you doing for fun? Just getting to know one another, because that is lasting. It goes back to that networking piece, making sure that you take the opportunity to network and learn what you can give to someone else, or resources that you can give to someone else, and the resources that you can also learn from someone else. But some of it is just sitting down with a friend over a campfire or playing spades, laughing with one another. That is where you really build friendship. And in a work that can be very heavy, you need friends who you are going to call on, not necessarily when you need something, but just to say, hey, this thing is going on. What do you think? Right? I just needed to vet for a second. Now we're good. Any advice? And also just, hey, how are you?
Yes.
So it is the times where we weren't necessarily working or in session that we got to know one another. It's the reason we're still very close. That are my favorite.
Yes, I love that. So what advice can you give future boot campers?
Be present. I know that it is a good 5 to 7 days, give and take travel and things like that. And that means we're away from our offices. And I know for me, I don't know work-life balance very well. I'm not even gonna lie about that. So putting away my computer and my phone, there's always something that I'm checking. And also close it down. Close it down. Check it later. The fires will still be fires. And you will still be able to fix them as best you can. And hopefully, or at least this is what I try to teach my clients or their executive teams, there is someone else in the office that is going to step up. Allow them to step up.
Mhm.
Allow them to be that second in the office so that everything is not contingent on one person being there in order for everything else to be successful. You will really grow in your ability to be present in the room, talking to your cohort, learning from the trainers, asking questions. Richard does an amazing presentation on communications. Richard's just very interactive in general, and high energy, but you will learn so much. So make sure to be present in the room. The
Mhm.
fires will be there and someone will put them out and you will feel better about having learned what you needed to learn in the room and giving all that you had in the room because you're going to take so much back home with you.
Yes, I love that. And thank you all for the wonderful comments. Someone said this is an amazing interview, which it has been. And we are getting ready to wrap up here. Is there anything else that you would like to say to our audience today, Tiffany?
Yeah. For those of you who are attending boot camp in next month, congratulations. Be present in the room. And for those of you who are thinking about boot camp, particularly those who are not sure if boot camp is for you, or what do you perhaps have to offer, knowing that you are excited about your community, knowing that you are engaged and want to be involved in the change is all that you need in
Mhm.
order to be effective. So reach out to your congressional member, apply for boot camp. You are not going to regret it. I had an absolutely amazing experience. And as someone who really came from a business background and not necessarily what I thought to be what I needed to be in the program, I learned more than I could have ever imagined. And I did not walk in feeling like I didn't know enough, but I did walk in knowing that I was going to learn a lot. And I was going to take that back to my community to make sure that we got what we needed and our communities got what we needed, and that I was going to be a part of moving progress forward. So apply.
Yes, to our 2026 boot campers, congratulations on being selected. We look forward to welcoming you next month to the CBCI's boot camp. So you guys have heard here from Tiffany. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to make some amazing connections. And we look forward to hearing from you guys afterwards so you can tell us how your experience was. Thank you so much, Tiffany.
Thank you all.